Welcome to the latest edition of Don't Take This as Gospel. I'm Mike Partika, and we're talking about the first sacrifice today. Now, I'll be drawing on material from Jordan B. Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. There will be a video description link to this on Amazon. It's an affiliate link. Please do pick up your copy there. And in this, Jordan Peterson goes into some length on the concept of sacrifice. Now, sacrifice is this concept of you can submit yourself to hardship in the present with the hopes of a better tomorrow. And he sees this as a major milestone on humanity's evolutionary psychology, the idea that you can bargain in the present for a better future, that you can actually make deals with the future and plan your life accordingly now to get better results in the future. So this is a major, major topic. So talking about on sacrifice, Jordan Peterson says, as the story goes, in the Garden of Eden, human beings were sinless, and our primordial parents, Adam and Eve, walked with God. Then the first couple ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil and turned away from God. Mankind was exiled from paradise and began its effortful mortal existence. The idea of sacrifice enters soon afterward, beginning with the story of Cain and Abel. After much contemplation, struggling humanity learns that God's favor could be gained and his wrath averted through proper sacrifice. So, in this, Jordan Peterson posits that sacrifice is a concept that humanity came up with itself after much contemplation and trial and error. Is that the case, though? Because he's basically saying that the sacrifices presented by Cain and Abel in the Bible are the first sacrifices. But is there evidence to the contrary? And the reason that I bring this up mainly is that in the prior video we talked a lot about Cain and Abel and why Cain's sacrifice was rejected. And I put forward the concept that Cain's sacrifice was rejected because he needed to bring forward an animal sacrifice like Abel did, rather than the plant sacrifice that he made. Now, that's not necessarily something that he needed to know beforehand, though. You know, he could have just seen that, okay, I sacrificed plants, nothing worked for me. Abel sacrificed animals, God favored his sacrifice. We're not exactly told how, but, we're just basically said God favored his sacrifice. And therefore, I should know now that I need to offer an animal sacrifice. If I expect my sacrifice to be deemed by God as worthy as Abel's sacrifice, I can't just bring plants. So that's something that Cain could have learned after the experience of having his sacrifice rejected by God. But is there reason to believe this is something that he should have known beforehand? And I think there is. Let's go to the story of Adam and Eve's fall. Now, I've assembled this from various verses in the book of Genesis, chapters 2 and 3. It goes something like this. Adam and Eve were both naked, and they were not ashamed. The Lord God commanded them, do not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, for in the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die. Eve took the forbidden fruit and ate. Well, I'm not saying that this happened immediately after. This is a selection of verses. I'm just trying to get the point across. There was actually some tempting and some rationalization going on here. She didn't just whip right around and eat. So Eve took the forbidden fruit and ate. She also gave it to Adam, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves coverings. And God said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you that you should not eat? The Lord God made tunics of skin for Adam and Eve and clothed them. So here we have this story of Adam and Eve. They're told, here is this thing that is a specific sin. You're not to do that. They do it. They've sinned. They now know that they're naked and they make coverings for themselves. And God says, well, who told you that you were naked? Oh my gosh, you did what I told you not to do. And then God turns around and makes these tunics of skin for Adam and Eve. Now, a couple of videos ago, I dealt with the fall of Adam and Eve in great length, talking about how Jordan Peterson interprets the nakedness of Adam and Eve and their awareness of their nakedness. So if you get a chance, go back and look at that video. But the basic bottom line of that video is that the nakedness, the feeling of nakedness that they feel is not a sensation of vulnerability as though they could be attacked or damaged by the circumstances of life or even by other human beings. And that's what Jordan Peterson posits. What it is, rather, is an awareness of the fact that they now have sinned and fallen and have committed this crime against God when they have disobeyed him. It is the shame of being caught with your hand in the cookie jar. And now you realize that your parent has a lesser opinion of you on account of what you have done, because you could have been an obedient child. Now you are a disobedient child. And the sensation that comes with that is you don't want to be looked at. You don't want people to see you for who you are, because now you're something worse than you could have been. You're someone who has done worse than you could have done. So looking at the fall of Adam and Eve, their reaction, their very human reaction to this new sensation of shame, this new sensation of, I don't want people to see me now that I've done wrong, is to make a covering for themselves, to physically express their desire not to be known in full. And so they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves coverings. Now, sometimes this is translated as loincloths, and therefore it's connected with sexuality, but the same word, I believe, in the Hebrew can actually be translated as aprons. Like they were basically trying to cover themselves head to toe because they didn't want to be seen. So God comes in and he says, who told you that you were naked? He realizes now that they've done this terrible thing. And here's the interesting thing, is that God, instead of accepting their covering as it is, he makes new coverings for them. He makes tunics of skin for Adam and Eve and clothed them. Now, sometimes people argue, well, that's because, the plant stuff's going to decay and fall apart real quick. It's not going to last. And so God is showing them a better way to do clothing. But remember what the purpose of the fig leaves, remember what the purpose of the plant garment is. It's not to cover them as if, they're afraid of exposure to the elements. It's not to cover them as if they're afraid of exposure to the teeth and claws of lions or things like that. These are experiences that they all have yet to have. What it is for covering their shame, for covering themselves in the sight of God. And so when God makes this replacement covering and makes these tunics of skin for Adam and Eve, we need to realize this is for the same purpose. That yes, these clothes were inadequate, but they were inadequate for the purpose that they were designed in the first place. They are inadequate for covering your sin. See, the tunics of skin represent a death, because what do you need in order to make tunics of skin? We're talking about tunics of skin here, and there's something that's not being said that really, it would have helped if there was some explicit mention of it. But in order to get tunics of skin, you kind of have to kill an animal. You kind of have to make an animal sacrifice. So in order to generate this better, more effective covering for Adam and Eve's sin, God makes the first sacrifice. This is something that God does on Adam's and Eve's behalf. It's not something that humanity comes up with itself. So, when we go back to Jordan Peterson's idea on where the idea of sacrifice enters with the story of Cain and Abel, to quote him, no, wrong. What we could actually say in this case is that the idea of sacrifice enters with God slaughtering an animal to make tunics of skin for Adam and Eve, forestalling death. You'll remember that in the day that you eat of it, you shall die. Forestalling the penalty of death with a cloak of death. This is the kind of covering that works. Now, looking forward from that moment, we can very readily see that Cain and Abel heard the story of the first sacrifice from Adam and Eve. I mean, if Adam and Eve didn't tell this to their children, then, how the heck did we get the story in the first place, right? So Cain and Abel heard this story of the first sacrifice from Adam and Eve, and then Abel, by offering animals, imitated God's original sacrifice properly. Cain, by offering plants, did not. So now, if we go back and look at the conclusions of the last video talking about Cain's need to bring an animal sacrifice, well, now it becomes so much worse, because it's one thing if you don't know what the rules are and you try to play the game. If you don't know what the rules are and you try to play the game and you fail at the game, well, there's a sense in which you really can't be blamed for that because you didn't know. I mean, now you know. Now somebody can come and tell you the rules, or you can see what someone did and then emulate that person and then succeed according to the rules. But if you already knew the rules beforehand, that's a whole other level. So this is gone up, this has been cranked up to 11 now, because now we realize that maybe Cain needed and knew that he needed to bring an animal sacrifice, but he didn't. And what does that tell you about Cain? What does that tell you about his view of how the world should work? Because anybody who's, thinking things scientifically through is going to say, well, there is a way that the world works, and maybe what I'm doing is not going to get me what I want, therefore I need to change what I'm doing. Whereas Cain comes to this idea of sacrifice with the idea of, hey, I know that what I am doing is important. What I am doing is worthwhile. What I am doing is worthy, and you should recognize that worth, and I am going to play the game as if the rules favor me, as if you understand that you should play according to my rules. And that is practically satanic. That is practically, it is a rebellion against reality to know what the rules are and then decide that you're going to play the game according to your rules, and you expect everyone else, including the judges, including the referees, to respect your rules instead of the actual rules of the game. That is being the devil himself, and that puts a whole new level into Cain's rage at rejection and the steps that he later takes in order to, feel better about his rejection. It is that kind of satanic desire to tear down the existing reality and anybody who would play by the rules and succeed that is expressed in Cain's murder of Abel. So that is what I wanted to bring to the table, and I thank you for watching this latest edition of Don't Take This as Gospel. We have been covering material from Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, and I do encourage you to pick up a copy of this book, and I am looking forward to, at some point in the future, picking up a copy of his next book, Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. And do pick it up at the affiliate link in the video description. And that's going to conclude my reviews of the material in 12 Rules for Life. So next time I pick up Don't Take This as Gospel, I'll be moving on to another book or topic. I'm not sure which yet. Thank you for following along. Do click subscribe to be notified in the future of more videos, and I will talk to you later.